Okay, so like I said, this afternoon I've been talking with James Nettles, aka Jim Nettles, and we were having a great time. This first the first hour of the show, we were talking a lot about um, author essentials, and everybody, you can check out that on author essentials workshops.com. And I actually picked up your book, Business Essentials for Writers, Jim. And I think, just talking with you this last hour, I loved talking with you about like what you're doing. And now what I want to do is dig into more of some of the skill sets, and maybe you can offer some insight, with some of the common things that you see with authors, or some of the common things that like kind of like a blueprint that you just offer to people. Can you share some of those best practices with us?
Oh, sure. So the first thing I'm going to say is when you're trying to get your foundations underneath you, it depends on what your goals are. The first lesson I always want to teach people is everything you need to do, you need to act with intention. And this is, I mean, we all struggle with it. We all work on it. I work on it every day. But when you're doing things, you need to look and see what are you doing and why. And it doesn't mean you have to plan out your life to every nth degree. What it means, though, is that you need to have an idea and a vision as to where you want to go. If you want to build a career as a writer, if you want to build a career as an artist, whatever it is you want to do, have an idea what that success looks like to you. And so if you've got an idea what success is, and for some of the folks we work with, it is, I got a Big Five contract. For some people, it's,
Can you
I sold 100
can you stop
books.
right there? When you say a big five contract, can you kind of break that down for the listeners?
Oh, sure. So when we're talking about a Big Five contract, what that really refers to is one of the major five publishing houses out of New York,
Right.
the Simon and Schusters and all that kind of out of New York, or one of their imprints.
Right.
And
Right.
what an imprint is a label that that particular publishing company is under. But what that really means is New York publishing. You've gotten an agent, and you've hit one of the major presses. And so, and this is one of those things that getting an understanding of how publishing works. So I won't actually step back a hair. Let's talk a little bit about the publishing business, because this is, I
That'd be
think, will help
great. Yeah, that would be great
set the
because
framework.
the folks listening in, what I try to do with the interviews is share stuff from professionals in the industry like yourself who have experience, and so that they can take something away from the show and be able to use it in their life or in their profession like today. You know what I mean?
Right. So, a lot of authors coming in have a really big misconception about how publishing works.
Mm-hmm.
You have that idea of, I wrote a book, I handed it to somebody, and then ta-da, it's on the shelves with a really cool cover.
Right. Right.
And we as authors have to remember, and I think I mentioned this in the first hour, you have to separate you, the author, the creator, the one who's bleeding your heart and your soul to create that baby, and you, the business owner, who is creating a product that now you need to sell. And it's that change of hats, it's that change of mindset that I see the most successful authors do very well. Now, you do have some people that have a business manager or somebody that handles all of that for them. But when you come into publishing, it's one of those things like any other creative business is remembering it's a business. If you're wanting to work with a traditional publisher, what that means is whether they're big or small, they're buying and licensing your work. They're
Mm-hmm.
buying the right to use your work and sell your work, and you get a cut of it, which
So,
means
like for
they're going
example,
in.
working with Falstaff books that you work with, that's the
Mhm.
model that they have, where they work with authors, and then they publish the books, and they go out and they sell the books, and the authors sell the books, and that's how it works. The authors get royalties off of their sales, right?
That's right. And so then if you're doing conventions and things like we spent the first hour talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you have a booth. That's when you sell more books yourself. You make more off the ones that you're selling that way. But traditional publishing, as a publisher, you have to remember they're a business and they've got to make money.
Right.
And so it costs a fair amount to publish a book. So if you are going to go through a traditional publisher, and I'm going to have a small rant for just a minute, there's a couple of terms out there that we see: vanity publishers. The new scam term is hybrid publishers, and I will not bite my tongue around that. If anyone comes to you and says that they're a publisher and they want you to write them a check, they are a scam. They're an author services
I completely
company.
agree. I've actually talked about that numerous times. I believe it or not, I have a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, that she actually had that happen to her, and it devastated her. I mean, like, she didn't want to write after that because of it, and she spent a fairly large sum of money to publish her book because the and I'm not going to name names, but the vanity publisher, you know, fed into her hopes and her dreams of being an author and selling a book. And they, you know, and they, the thing is they used Amazon to print the book just like we can.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
you know, everybody listening out there, Amazon, once you set up an account, you can buy the books from Amazon directly from Amazon, and they don't charge you to upload it. So the reason why I'm saying that that's so important is because the vanity publisher, they didn't hire a different publishing company. They didn't pay, you know, like, you know, a different service setup fee and all that stuff. They use the same services that we're using to publish our books, you know?
Right.
So I totally agree. I'm glad you actually brought that up, Jim, because that is one of those pitfalls, you know, that people should just like, hey, wait a minute, why are you asking me for money? Now, if it's for like, you know, logistic services, like what you're doing, you know, consulting or editing or, you know, cover art design, those legitimate type of services, those are part of the cost of operating your business. But vanity publishing, when somebody says, hey, you got to do this or you got to do that and pay me $5 million, like, what? Why?
It's really a painful thing. So publishing gets broken down between, and we started talking about the big five publishers, the major publishing houses. You're not going to get in there without an agent. Then you have the mid-tier publishing houses that are, some of them do accept unagented work that goes into slush. What slush is an unsolicited manuscript, generally from an author they may or may not know, but it just kind of comes in, and as they have time, they go and read through those. Or it can be a small press. Falstaff is a small press, but it's growing rapidly. They're going to have more than 80 titles released this year. They're looking at basically averaging 2 titles released every week this year, and they're going to scale back some next year. But that's more than double than most presses are going to put out in a given year.
Oh yeah.
So to give you an idea, most presses, most publishers, if they turn loose a book a week, that's about average, if not a little bit high. So what an author services company does, which is what we have, is that we actually can provide those services to you that a publisher would do. So, and pretty much everybody that I work with either works for a publisher and is consulting for us, or has worked for a publisher. So everybody we know comes from the publishing industry. And most of them have 10 years or more experience. There are times that that's not always true, but that's most everybody we work with. So if you go to somebody and they say, yes, we're publisher XYZ, and we love your book, we want to sign your book today. So the first thing I need you to do is write me a check for $5,000, and we'll start your process today. Run.
Yeah.
Don't walk. Yeah. Run. Burn their email address, block them, don't have anything else to do with them. I can't tell you the frequency with which I have had people I know well, and some of whom know what we do, come and, that have talked about their publisher. But usually this happens more often when I'll be at a convention holding, because I hold, a lot of the time I do office hours at a convention, which is pretty much find me in the bar, we'll sit down and we'll talk for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Come and say, well, my publisher is doing da-da-da. Who's your publisher? And the first time somebody has to hesitate about saying who their publisher is, because they've probably heard me give part of this rant, that's an indicator there's a problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, you know what's crazy is like 2 weeks ago, I had someone message me on Twitter saying that they loved my book cover and that they would like to talk to me about doing a book video. And I was like, okay, I kind of figured it was like a spam or like predatory type services type thing. And so I was like, oh, okay, so send me a link to your company's website. They send me a link to their company's website, and they're like, oh, we have this many followers or whatever, which that's a whole nother subject. I take a solid person over a like any day, but they wanted $5,000 to produce a YouTube video, and I was like, you've lost your mind. I mean, like, there's just no way. So I just wrote a polite little comment back to the person, and I said, I appreciate you're messaging me. However, I'm not really interested in your services. Thank you anyway. And that was that. But it's crazy because there are folks that sit on social media like that and they look for people who are wanting to promote their book or try to sell their book, and they look for folks like that, and that's their little target. That's like, oh, you know what, this person's trying to promote their book. Let me send them this thing about my services and tell them, like, I've got 100,000 followers. Well, you can buy 100,000 followers. You can buy
100,000 bots.
Yes,
I can build 100,000 bots in a weekend if you really want me to.
Yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't mean anything. Like, those numbers mean nothing. So, but I'm sorry. I just want to add that because that literally happened to me like 2 weeks ago. So,
well, a lot of the time, what happens is that people will come to me and say, well, I doing it, and you start asking the questions, and you find out very quickly they signed with a vanity publisher, and not only are they paying that publisher to publish their book, they've also signed over their rights.
Yeah, that's the other, like you were talking about intellectual property last hour. That's the other thing that kills me. I'm like, why would you ever give your baby away? Why?
I'm like, no legitimate publisher, and this is, if nobody else takes this away, anything else I have to say today, no legitimate publisher is going to take your rights away. Yes. They are licensing the right to use and sell your book until you meet certain criteria and you can get your rights back. And they're not getting all of your rights. They may have just the print rights. They may just have the ebook rights. They may just have the audiobook rights.
Hold that thought for just a second, Jim. Let me do the station ID.
Sure.
Everybody, you're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So I actually have an example of that because I self-publish, and I started at Savannah Quill in 2016 as an indie author convention. But the idea in mind when I started it this was before I started publishing, my own work. It was to build a network of authors so that we could help each other with resources and that kind of thing. And but it's been mostly like nonprofit and community things like that. So this year, and I've been kicking the idea around since last year, about a year or so now. But this year, I decided that I wanted to do my own small press imprint. And I'm calling it Valhalla Books. And I did a closed call asking 10 of my friends that I know that I like their work to be part of an anthology that I wanted to release in May. I've since decided to wait because of everything going on. I wanted to, wait until later on in the year, closer to Halloween now, but whatever. So what I decided with that though was, and this is just an example, because I was in a contract with an anthology I was in, but I mirrored it off of that, where I get unlimited use of their short story in the collected anthology indefinitely, and I get exclusive publishing for the first 6 months. And then after the first 6 months, we have a mutually exclusive agreement where I can still publish their work in the anthology and they can publish their work individually and separately if they want to. But that first 6 months, of publishing, it's just like an exclusive, whatever. At no point do I own the rights, or did I even ask them to own the rights to their publication or their IP or their characters or anything like that. But having the ability to publish that story without it being published in multiple, anthologies or whatever. And I felt like that was pretty fair. But, when I was doing some research on contracts, I was amazed that there are, and I'm going to just say it, like there's vanity small print publishers out there that are saying, hey, you know what, if you sign with us, we're not going to give you an advance, and we're not going to, promise you any royalties or whatever, and you're going to sign the rights over to us because we're going to publish it for you. Because they kind of, make it like the big monster in the room, like, oh, publishing's so hard. Ooh, you an author, you can't figure it out. We'll do it for you though, and we'll take everything away from you. And I'm like, what? There are people out there that are doing this?
Absolutely. And I mean, the number of people that come find me or refer to me that come in and they basically have this, they've been traumatized.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an assault. Because you've in essence taken their creativity away.
You've stolen their baby.
You've stolen their baby. And the truth of it is, this is where always have somebody look at your contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Always have a contract, but have somebody look at your contracts. I've got a lot of people that I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV.
Yeah, me either.
Though I have played one in a play. But
got me there too. Twilight Zone.
But I deal with a lot of contracts. I deal with a lot of IP type contracts. I deal with a lot of attorneys. I've seen a lot of them, and I have people I refer stuff over to. But yeah, it's really bad. The one thing I'm going to add out there, especially if you're on Facebook, I have a hate relationship with social media, but it's a necessity, and it has its uses. But follow Writer Beware.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that one.
They do a fantastic job about telling you the things that are out there. I refer people out to them all the time. The way I do business and the way we do that, everybody that I do anything with operates is, I don't necessarily care if you're doing business with me. I want you to do business with people that you resonate with and that are a good fit for you.
And are reputable and ethical. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree on that. It's like, you don't, if I'm not the right fit, but I know someone who can help you, I'm going to refer you to that person.
I'll refer you all day long, because I want you to be successful. If it's with me, great. If it's with somebody else, great. That's not my first driver. My first driver is, if you are doing things well and doing them successfully, great. I mean, that's really the attitude we should have in this community. Is just because I sell somebody a book doesn't mean that you can't sell them a book. I'll go back to one of the things that frequently a group of us that do a lot of conventions together. We will all be at a table together, 2, 3, 4 tables in a row. And if somebody comes, the first question is, what do you like to read? What do you enjoy? Okay, that's me. Let me tell you about the series. Or we can go and say, that's not me. You need to go see Darren Kennedy. You need to go see Falstaff Books. You need to go see Stewart. You need to see Gail. You need to see these folks, because we all know each other's work. We all are happy to go and say, that's who you need to go see and do and deal with. And that's the way, if we operated as a community, readers learn who they like, the community learns who they like, and authors collaborating together is really one of those things that works. When I see people, I won't name names, but I've done panels with them where you sit there, and I'll give you a perfect example. At a convention last year, was on a panel that had about 500 people in the room, and this was on research. And one of the guys says, yeah, I don't really care if you get stuck down a rabbit hole, because if you're stuck down a rabbit hole, then you're not out there writing a book to compete with me.
Now, see, that's the broken mentality, because it's not a competition. I'm going to be honest with you, Jim. I have talked to world best-selling authors interviewing with my show, not only with my show, but also with my career with Savannah Morning News as a freelance writer. And every single one of the best-selling authors, and I'm talking about people that have sold millions of copies of their books,
Mm-hmm.
humble, humble, humble. They're grateful for the opportunity to be able to do what they love. And they are never, ever, I've never heard any one of them try to say something like that. And honestly, I think that's just a disgusting, broken mentality. There's, one of my favorite indie authors is a guy named Craig Martell, and he says, "Rising tide lifts all boats."
Mm-hmm.
There's no shortage of the pie, people. There's like, Jim's success, it has nothing to do with like what level of success I can have, but we can collaborate and we can help each other. And by helping each other, that doesn't mean that he's going to be more successful or I'm going to be more successful. It has nothing to do with it. And when you have a scarcity mindset, like you were talking about with that guy, that's just broken. And I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have, to me, it's like you have to have the opposite. You have to have, a bountiful, like you have to have this idea that, what, the universe, God is, whatever you believe in, there's enough for everybody, and your blessings are your blessings. They were meant for you, not me. So I'm glad that you
I
brought
mean,
that up. And I'm sorry I got a little fired up here, but that is one of my little hot buttons because I'm like, oh no, the scarcity mindset is a plague. It's a cancer. It's just not a good, ugh.
that's the number one thing that holds you back. I mean,
Yes.
all the work that we do, my first goal is, can we help somebody? And like I say, the reason I do a lot of conventions and a lot of the things that I do, I get to go meet people, and there's a lot of people I help that that don't buy a book from me, that aren't ever going to use our services. But if I can help somebody, if I can answer a question, if they get something from me and I can point them to somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. But at the same time, a lot of people, I mean, a lot of the business we get is all referrals from people that I know, that know me personally. And I'm very grateful for those relationships, but I don't have those relationships just from the semi business.
Oh,
I have those relationships because those are people I trust and that trust me.
I am totally with you there.
And
I'm a relationships-based person, not transactional. I mean, yes, we have to do transactions if we want to be able to sell the things we want to do. But like you said, if it's not a good fit, I probably know somebody that I can help you with, that can help you with what you're looking for. I might not have the answer, but I can find out for you. And I think that mindset is so much better. I mean, especially when you're doing professional work, if you're if you're putting your little hat out there and you're saying, "Hey guys, I'm selling this service." If you're not professional, you will not be in business very long at all. I don't care what you're doing. If you're selling cheeseburgers or if you're, working with best-selling authors or film or whatever, I don't care what you do. If you're not professional with what you're doing and you don't base your I guess your interactions with people on your relationship with them and you try to do transactional, yeah, you know what? I might be able to sell you that first cheeseburger because, I did like a, price cut or something
I'm
like that.
hungry and it's 99 cents.
Yep. But if I treat you bad, I don't care if it's the best burger in the world. You're not coming back, you know?
Well, it's the old adage. People do business with people they like, know, and trust.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that I do talk about with the creative process, reading and writing is a co-creation experience. The way I visualize a story, the way I tell that story,
Mm-hmm.
is not going to be the same way that any other human being reads it. Not exactly. We all get that shared experience. You get the plot, you get the story, you get the characters. But it's the things that I have in myself about how I see and interpret things that are going to influence the way that I see and read that story. And that's one of those things that I think we sometimes as creators forget, is that how much influence a story can have on somebody. How much influence or how much meaning that can have. I mean, think right now if somebody's picking up their to be read pile and they pick up something that makes them laugh right now. They pick up something that makes them think more deeply right now. that author is meaning more to that person at that moment, and that story may not last for 5 minutes after they put it down, or that could be one of those things that they carry with them the rest of their lives.
That is so true.
As creators, we have a responsibility in how we behave and how we act and how we relate to people, because we have such a big influence potentially on the way they think and the way they act. And if we're being, what language I want to use here, if we're not being
good citizens,
good citizen, we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to find a good language for it, but it's okay.
No, I mean, like you said, good citizens at the same time I did, because I was thinking, I knew what you were thinking. I was like, if you're not being a good citizen of the community,
Yeah, the language I was going to use probably is not appropriate here. So
yeah, thank you for that, because we're on community radio.
If we're not being that good member of the community, if we're not being a good neighbor and a good friend to that person we've never met, they're not going to want to continue to deal with us, because if we're a soul-sucking, negative black hole, then if that's the presence I have and that's what I give off, I'm pulling everybody else down.
Yeah.
I write horror. I write some rather dark things, but I also still believe there's humor even in the darkest point. I've got a friend and a client I've been working with on some grim, dark stuff that I'm the one that if you're sitting there and you're walking through the forest full of bodies hanging from the trees, and there's been a mass murder and everything else, I'm going to be the first one that walks by and says, "Hey, buddy, hadn't seen you in a while. Still hanging around, I see." You've got to have that something that gallows humor that breaks the tension. I mean, so I've been laughing every time you mention GnomeCon down there, because one of my best-selling books is a murder mystery where a gnome, or where somebody's killing gnomes and turning them into garden statues.
Okay.
So I have people send me gnomes from all over the place. If I ever see somebody at a convention that's wearing a gnome costume, I will always sign and give them a book. It's a novella. It's out of one of my series. It's a fun little book, but it's the one that everybody reads and comes back and goes, "Okay, yeah, I need the rest of your stuff."
Nice. Hold on for a second, Jim. I keep wanting to say James because that's like how I mentioned before, but we've got to do the station IDs, everybody. So we'll be right back.
The Live Oak Public Library System offers local residents access to hundreds of thousands of movies, television programs, albums, audiobooks, ebooks, and digital comic books for free on your streaming television and mobile devices through the Hoopla app. Supported devices include Roku, Fire, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android, among others. The selection is vast. All you'll need is your library card. Find the Hoopla app on your device and more information at liveoakpl.org.
Now you have a chance to support both Savannah Independent Artists and WRUU during this shelter-in-place order to stop the spread of COVID-19. Creatives in Need is a group of independent artists hosted by the Roots Up Gallery, which is collaborating with WRUU during this shelter-in-place to offer an online art gallery at www.rootsupgallery.com. For every work of art sold at this online gallery, the artists receive 80% from the sales and 20% goes to WRUU and its programs like Art on the Air. Interested listeners can go to www.rootsupgallery.com to start shopping today. Voting is now open for Connect Savannah's annual Best of Savannah Readers Poll, and WRUU is once again on the ballot. Last year, you voted us best in the local radio station and talk radio station categories. Continue your support of WRUU 107.5 FM by again voting for us in the Best Local Radio Station and Best Local Talk Radio Station categories. And this year, vote for your favorite WRUU morning program and favorite WRUU host. Voting ends at 11:59 p.m. sharp on Sunday, May 3rd, and results will be revealed the night of Tuesday, May 19th. For details and voting, visit connectsavannah.com. And as always, thank you for listening to, supporting, and voting for WRUU-LP Savannah.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer, and my special guest today is a guy named Jim Nettles, and we've been talking about the business side of things and conventions and that kind of thing. Jim, I'm all on that with the relationship stuff because so many folks are transactional, and I mean we're advertised to and marketed to 24/7, especially with social media and phones and things like that. But one of the things I like about any kind of community that you get involved in, right? One of the things I love about this is being able to connect with people and learn their stories and then make friends and things like that. And so when you are, because you've been talking about different people that'll come up to you and they'll ask you questions or whatever. When you are faced with that kind of, let's say somebody, they get suckered into one of the vanity publishing things, right? What's the first thing that you offer for them to try to help them, move out of that step or, move past that? What's something that you offer as, just like consolation or advice or whatever?
The first thing I usually offer is, it depends where we're sitting, either a drink or coffee.
Okay.
Kind of depends what they need first. Usually when I'm sitting down to have that conversation, because you can tell you see that look of violation, that they suspect that they've done the wrong thing. They've heard something or somebody said, you shouldn't have done that, or you did what, or the things that happen. The first thing I'm like is, let me see the contract. Let's see what the contract is. Let's understand what you've actually signed to. Let's talk a little bit about how much you paid. What's the money in this? And take a look at that. But the first thing I want to know is, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What's the work you're doing? How much does that one asset mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we all know, especially because generally this is what happens. The predatory stuff happens to people on their first book.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately have known people that were so enamored with the process and they were able to feed them so much, they signed a second or a third contract or did a multi-book contract and were on the hook for tons of money as well as handing over work. But let's look at the paperwork. Let's look at the contract. What have you done? Let's understand. And usually the first thing I'm going to say is, okay, here's the reality of your situation. You've signed this over, you signed that over. At a bare minimum, contractually, you're obligated to this list of things.
Right.
And usually you'll see that you can that clenching of the heart and that sinking feeling of what, and I've done what. But a lot of the time I'll look and see where they're at and what's going on. And the first thing you have to kind of offer is that tough love of, this is how the industry is meant to work, and even though parts of it are broken and antiquated, this is the way the industry currently works. We'll talk a little bit about Yogg's Law, money flows to the author, things like that. And then we'll talk the reality of the contract. And a lot of the time, it's not ever a pleasant conversation. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And one of the first things I'll come and look and say is, okay, how attached are you to this piece of work?
Yeah.
And if you want to see somebody, but this is my baby, this is my first book, this is like, yep, that's your first book.
Mm-hmm.
You may as well write it off, or it's going to cost you this amount to get it back. Do you think that the market value of that book is X amount to get it back? And, oh, by the way, this is not always true. I'm kind of going worst case scenario here, but frequently I will use an example of somebody that was a part of our community for a period of time, still a friend, signed a book, got a really nice cover. I'll grant them that. They did a gorgeous cover, but the first page had a number of editing issues on it. And, when the published work would not have made it out of a slush read for any publisher I know, and they'd built his website. They'd done everything end to end for him, and he'd written him about 25,000 in 25 grand in checks at that point.
Wow.
And that was before he had the first book delivered.
Wow. And
he
that
was
to build like
contractually obligated. Yeah, he was contractually obligated to buy a block of books from them.
At a certain
so once it was
price.
I mean, he was on the hook to start with at about $30,000.
Wow. That is really, it's sad and unfortunate, and it's almost kind of like that buyer beware, caveat emptor, because the folks like that, any kind of predatory stuff like predatory lending, with the for-profit schools when they had predatory enrollment, that kind of thing, they play off of people's dreams and goals, and they work that angle, and they target people like that, and it's just horrible.
Well, and here's what really hurt was when I looked at him, I said, well, if we had done the work for you, that would have cost you if we had done everything they did for you, we could have done it between $3,000 and $5,000.
Yeah.
And you'd still have your rights, and you'd never pay us another dime because you'd be able to independently publish through any distributor you wanted with that final product.
And that's the nice thing about it, because those services, they are necessary. A lot honestly, I usually do everything myself, and I'll have like some ARCs, whatever, because I don't have a big budget. I don't have, I work a day job and I write and whatever, but those services are necessary. I mean, good editing, a good cover, good tagline, good blurb. Those are all like, core essentials outside of the actual story, right? And I agree that, services are important. I mean, those are legit services, but man, I can't believe, somebody would have the nerve to take somebody's, 30 grand just to, sell them the idea of publishing a book. And folks, if you're listening in there and you're like, well, man, $30,000 is a lot of money as far as earning royalties. You have to sell a lot of books to make that much money off of one book. So,
I mean, right now for the business book, we knocked it down to 99 cents on Amazon. It's about to go wide. But we knocked it down to 99 cents during this quarantine period because I wanted people to be able to get it, access it, and get the benefit of it while being able to use it. Because, I mean, we all know that most creatives, especially ones trying to make a living from it, you don't make a real big living. It's the majority. I mean, you can make a nice living as a good mid-list author. It takes time, it takes work, it takes investment. I didn't write this book to go make a ton of money. I wouldn't object, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, I'm a good little business guy. But out of that 99 cents it's going for on Amazon, which is the lowest I could do it for, I would basically give it away for free if I could get away with that based on everything else we're doing. But I dropped it to 99 cents. And off of that, I'll make 33 cents per sale. That's if there's no advertising going on.
Yeah, and if you advertise, you're going to sink, the pay through for the clicks or whatever, and you're not. I mean, honestly, there are a lot like this is something I call shovels and jeans, right? So during the gold rush, the people that were making money were the folks that were selling shovels and jeans. It wasn't the miners out there digging for the gold. And there's so many people out there, and and one of the things, I mean, honestly, I love what you've done with this, and I think it's a great core concept of the different things that you've put in the book. I have not finished reading it. I just started reading it. I said that in the last hour, but whatever. But you have a background, you have experience, you have relative and relevant experience that you can help people avoid pitfalls and also, share best practices and things like that. But there's a lot of folks out there, just like the Vanity Publishing, that they sell the idea of buy my course and you can be the next best-selling yada, yada, yada. I don't care what it is, because there's a bunch of these internet courses out there or whatever. And I think separating, the wheat from the chaff is like this. You have to look and see, okay, well, what are they offering? Do they have, like I couldn't write a book about being a best-selling author because I'm not, a best-selling author. I couldn't dare give somebody the advice of saying, oh, well, this is what, you need to do, because I haven't lived that. I haven't experienced that. And but there are folks out there who don't have that experience. They're not even writers or not even authors, that they're doing this kind of thing, and it goes to me in the same vein of like vanity publishing. It's selling that idea that, this person wants to be an author. Let me sell you on this idea. Well, everything I've shown you, these are tried and true practices, but then there's no accountability, right? Once they have your money, they're gone. I don't like that.
Everything, most of the workshops I do are live and in person. We do host, right now we've got one recorded workshop out there, which is actually John Hartness doing his Path to Publication workshop. I do something very similar to that for nonfiction. We're recording a number of the workshops I do, but I actually prefer to do them live. So when we offer them, we try to keep them nice and affordable, and it's high touch. It's me. It's me bringing in some of my other experts to talk about certain areas. So you can ask questions. We've got support groups out there. And so it's all about that in the community. And, one of my goals is to be available to anybody I ever do in touch with, whether they've bought anything or not.
And that's the thing I'm saying is, like, when people are looking for, again, I totally agree with continuing education and learning. And, I've read a ton of books over my lifetime about leadership and business and, writing. In the last couple of years, I've read a lot of books about writing. Look for folks who are credentialed and have, relevant experience, folks. Like, so this is just me talking to the folks listening in. You want to look for guys like Jim because, honestly, I don't know Jim from anybody. I was introduced to him by a friend online. I like that friend enough that I took his word and I wanted to, connect with him and invite him onto my radio show. Sight unseen. Like we hadn't talked before this. It was like a brief Facebook chat. Hey, send me your bio, your photo, that kind of thing, based off of Bobby Nash's recommendation, right? And the same thing for you. You came on my radio show based off of Bobby Nash's recommendation. You didn't know me from anybody. You didn't know me from Adam, right? But when I looked at your book, I was like, okay, let me check this out. And seeing your background, I honestly didn't even know that you and John Hartness are friends until we were talking on the radio today. Seeing like what you had in your book and seeing like the stuff that, your background, I was like, okay, this guy has been doing business and tech for a long time. This is pretty cool. This would be a great way to share with folks. And so, like, everybody listening, if you're looking for, and I'm not trying to sell, Jim's book here, but I'm trying to tell you, like, from what I've seen, and, like, my background is in business and leadership. I have an undergrad in business. I have a master's in business, and I also have a master of information systems. So I have education. So if that's one of those things like, oh, you're not educated, I have a college degree. It doesn't matter. If you're looking for legitimate, credible sources, this is the kind of stuff you want to look for. People like Jim, people like John Hartness, people like Bobby Nash, folks that are like that. They're good citizens in the community, and they're doing the right things. And then, like you said, it would be great if you sold a bunch of these books, but that's not the reason why you're doing it. You're trying to, have this grouping of questions that you've answered, like this summary of everything, saying, hey folks, you know what? This is some stuff that comes up over and over and over again. Maybe you could check out this book and see, like, okay, you can avoid some of those pitfalls yourself. I love that, man. I love that.
Well, and I really appreciate that. I mean, that was the goal with putting the work out. I openly admit, just like all the rest of us, there's times I suffer from physician heal thyself. Our websites and stuff we always focus on clients first. We're rebuilding the AE website to be more of a media site and an education site, just so there's resources out there. It's not, you're not signing up for anything. If you want to sign up for our newsletters and stuff, great. We're trying to put as much information there because, again, my first driver is I hate seeing people get ripped off.
Taking advantage of.
People get misled. And because so often my network of people then go, this is the person you need to see. I've spent most of my career as a fixer. And so if I get a phone call, it usually means something's on fire.
Yeah.
That's true of business clients. That's true of corporate clients. I've spent a lot of my career doing continuity work. I've spent a lot of my career doing contingency, disaster recovery work.
Boy, I tell you what, nobody had expected this kind of interruption with the pandemic. I mean,
I hate to tell you, actually, we've been talking about it for 30 years.
Well, I know in models and theories they've been talking about it, but what I'm saying was like for it to actually come around in our modern day technology and everything that's available and the disruption of everyday life, I know that they were planning, like with the resource centers and things like that, and they were talking about it, but for it to actually happen, I think it's a difference between like practice and theory and application.
Yep.
So I know that they've been talking about it for 30 years, or it's not the first time, but for everything to come around like this and it completely just shut down so many different things, it's just
pandemic is the hardest thing to plan for.
Yeah. With regular business continuity, like fire or something like that, or a server interruption or something like that. That's there's different things that you can plan with, and you can have backups and that kind of thing. But this being like a macroeconomic effect on everybody has been just crazy, and I don't know. I think it's cool that you offer those kind of services though to help businesses recover and to kind of plan out like, okay, well, if this is what you're doing, this is the track you're on, this is some of the things you need to look at and avoid and prepare for. And I don't think most people were prepared at all. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, even my wife, who is a certified continuity specialist. In fact, when she was being certified for it, and I'd worked in it for years and years, she was doing that because at one point in time she managed business continuity and disaster recovery for a Fortune 50 company. As we were going down, we were halfway on the drive to Florida, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not really sure I want to go hear all of this." And it's a hard thing for most people to sit there and contemplate all the circumstances and all the possibilities. And I mean, this is absolutely something that most people did not think could ever happen. But the way this has gone off is kind of checks all the magic boxes. Mm-hmm. The only good news is that its fatality rate is relatively low so far.
Yeah.
And we can all be thankful for that. But I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of traveling. I used to live in hotels, airports all the time.
See, I that's not something I would desire to do. I never want to be a road warrior. That's one of the reasons why I didn't want to get into like outside sales and stuff, because I know some people, they love doing that and they love doing consulting and they love, public speaking. It's just not something that I love talking with groups of people and I love doing presentations at like schools and stuff like that. But I couldn't imagine living that life of, being on the road and traveling like that. What was it like for you? Did you enjoy it, or, why did you get out of it?
I enjoyed it a lot for a lot of years. And I started doing it in my early 20s. I grew up traveling. So like I said, I grew up in business and politics and stuff. So I was kind of used to traveling, even though most of that was, being within driving distance. But because of how I'm wired and what I like to do, it let me experience new things, new places, new people, new problems.
Okay.
Which is why I've worked in the plethora of industries and the plethora of projects, and I've worked on all the stuff that I have.
Yeah.
And it's why I have this big screwed up background that if I actually put my entire resume out there on anything, nobody would ever believe it, because they're like, it's not possible to have done all of these things. And I'm like, well, if you're a consultant, if you're a consultant and you know certain things, then the next thing that happens, you get pulled into something adjacent and something adjacent. I did some work on self-driving cars in the late 90s.
Oh, wow.
Out in California. Because I was in the insurance industry, And so I was there looking at a lot of that from what did that mean from insurance legislation, insurance systems, policies, all the, So we were out there looking at the test tracks on how things ran and they were going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so even back that far, I was involved in conversations about the ethos of AIs and self-driving cars, and some of we played scenario games about that sort of stuff. Right now, one of the projects I'm working on, because I really love working with creative projects, is something called Trompe-l'oeil. It's out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And right now we're meeting through and having to change the business model because we were looking to establish a permanent facility as a integrated arts facility. Now we're probably going to continue to do pop-up type stuff for a while till we figure out what the new normal is. But even we've had to cancel all of our events for that.
They actually had a place here in Savannah that was like that. It was kind of like a makers place that creators and makers could get together, and it was a cohab space or whatever. And the only thing I've seen with those is that it's kind of crazy because creatives, they'll check something out, and if it benefits them, it's like anything else, right? If it benefits them, they'll continue to use it. If it doesn't, they're going to dip pretty quickly. And I think creatives sometimes, and people that vend and do like stuff like that, they're a little bit more ready to leave something and abandon it if it's not working, because they've got, like yourself, you've got so much experience that you already know, is this going to be something that's going to work or not? You know what I mean? We actually have about 2 minutes left, Jim. Can you share with us how people can check out? Huh?
I said 2 hours went by fast.
I know. I feel like I could talk to you for like the rest of the day, and we could just whatever. But can you share with us where the best place for people to find your stuff is?
Sure. The easiest places to find me are jamespnettles.com or authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com. You can get to most of the things I'm involved with, at least that we've been talking about today, from those. The Continual website is one that we're in the process of building. So the Continual convention we talked about earlier will be out there, but right now it's up on Facebook. And the link will be going out there a little bit broader. But it's going to be growing pretty quickly over the next few weeks. So that's going to be continualconvention.com. And if you're interested in some of the other stuff that I do, you can look for booksandbeer.net. Or you can look for creatingpros.com. Both of those sites will be back up here shortly. We were heavy into the re-engineering all the different sites process when this hit. And so our Author Essentials site is midway through the transformation as well. But we're building a lot of stuff for clients, and clients come first.
That's awesome, Jim. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in. It's been a really fun conversation.
We'll have to do it again sometime soon. I want to keep going on because that's something about skill sets and learning that I love. It's you build this foundation, and then you continually, if you're like me and sounds like yourself, lifelong learners, you are constantly building on that foundation. You're building new skill sets. You're making new relationships. You're meeting new friends. And that's one of the things I love doing, and it sounds like you are doing the same thing up in your neck of the woods. So thank you again, Jim, for being on the show today.
Hey, I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm going to have to buy Bobby a beer.
Awesome. All right. I'll talk to you later. All right, everybody.